I didn't expect intergalactic employment to involve this much awkwardness, but somehow my first week on the space station had already made me question basic human dignity. Between the coffee replicator that occasionally sprayed hot liquid in your face and the oxygen level monitors that beeped like manic parrots, nothing had prepared me for her. The alien janitor. She wasn't just any janitor, she was an enigma wrapped in cleaning overalls that shimmered like liquid mercury, with this habit. Every time she appeared near me, she bent over. A lot. And not in any ordinary human way. She insisted it was customary, some cultural ritual from her home planet, but the way her body morphed as she did it, humanoid 1 second, blob like the next, then a floating jellyfish mid-bend, made it nearly impossible not to stare, and staring was exactly what my brain decided to do. At first, I thought it was unintentional. Maybe she tripped, or her legs had the wrong angle for low-gravity cleaning. But no, she held those poses with the precision of a ballerina performing some indecipherable salute. My first day, she bent over beside the replicator, and I swear, her head briefly became a luminescent blob that blinked like it was winking at me. I nearly dropped my cup of replicated coffee into the trash chute. Good morning," I muttered, trying to sound casual, which in hindsight came out somewhere between nervous and a drunk toastmaster at an alien wedding. She straightened, looked at me, and clicked something in her throat that I assumed was a greeting. Then, without warning, she bent over again. I tried to focus on her arms polishing the metal floor, but my imagination had other plans. By the third day, I realized her bending was not just a cleaning method. It was ritualized. Customary, she told me when I cautiously asked if this was some form of galactic joke. Customary my ass. I had seen enough alien documentaries to know this was either a sign of respect or a very advanced form of seduction, and judging by the way her form shimmered into something unidentifiable just as I blinked, I was leaning toward seduction with zero prior warning. Every time she bent over, her form shifted, first humanoid, then blob, then jellyfish. It was like watching a poorly programmed hologram dance in slow motion, but one that made my body betray me every single time. She seemed utterly oblivious to human embarrassment, and that made it worse. The station had a strict no-touch policy, but apparently no one had added "no staring at shape-shifting janitors" to the employee manual. I tried to rationalize it. "She's just performing a cultural ritual," I whispered to myself, but my brain countered. "Sure, and pigs fly faster than this jellyfish blob bends over." I started timing her bends like some lunatic, noting the angles, the length of each hold, and the frequency per hour. By the fourth repetition, I had a spreadsheet in my head. I might have been obsessed. Her shape-shifting didn't help. Sometimes I'd swear she looked like a humanoid with ridiculously long legs and a smile that screamed innocence. Then she'd morph mid-bend, legs disappearing, becoming a gelatinous blob that hovered over the floor, arms flailing like a conductor directing chaos. Once, I swear, she hovered over my workstation as a translucent jellyfish, tentacles grazing the console, and I had to bend awkwardly to avoid tripping over them while simultaneously trying to pretend nothing was happening. I couldn't tell if she was cleaning, communicating, or testing my ability to handle erotic chaos. Probably all three. I kept reminding myself that she was a janitor, a cleaning professional. But the rituals, the bending, the shape-shifting, combined with the way her form seemed to accentuate parts of her anatomy that no cleaning tools should ever highlight, made it impossible to treat this as normal work. I tried to focus on my tasks, pretending to calibrate oxygen levels and check holographic data. She bent over again. Blob form. Tentacles flailing. I nearly knocked my holopad into the airlock. And somehow, through all this chaos, she looked at me and made that clicking sound again, which I could have sworn was an alien version of a seductive chuckle. By the end of my first week, I realized two things. 1, I was not prepared for alien customs, and 2, I was irreversibly hooked on the chaos she brought. She bent, she morphed, she hovered, and I stared. I told myself it was professional observation, but if I'm honest, I was learning far more about alien anatomy and human endurance than any orientation manual had promised. Customary, she called it. I called it a personal endurance test, and I was failing spectacularly. By the second week, I had developed a sort of nervous rhythm around her bending rituals, but that didn't mean I was ready. Not even close. She had started timing her appearances with alarming precision, always arriving at the exact moment I tried to concentrate, hovering near my workstation like a bizarre intergalactic alarm clock. The moment I turned a page on my holopad, there she was, bending over, shape-shifting, performing what she still insisted was a customary act of respect. Today she began humanoid, her legs long and graceful, back arching with perfect balance. My eyes darted helplessly between her movements and the blinking console lights, and I had to swallow twice to keep from making embarrassing sounds. She clicked her throat in satisfaction, or was it mockery? Hard to tell when your mind is juggling lust, confusion, and panic. Then she morphed. Halfway through a bend, her arms dissolved into translucent jelly tendrils that swept across the floor, and I accidentally leaned too close. One tendril wrapped around my wrist, sticky but warm, and I had to fight the urge to flinch or say something stupid. All part of the ritual, she said in that melodic clicking tone, which somehow made it worse. Her voice was light, teasing, like she knew exactly how chaotic she was making me feel. I tried to remind myself she was a janitor, a professional cleaner, yet the gelatinous blob hovering beside me seemed anything but professional. She didn't just bend, she performed variations. Sometimes she stretched out horizontally, tentacles hovering like a jellyfish in zero gravity, making me reach awkwardly to avoid bumping into her while also trying not to appear transfixed. Once, she shaped herself into a semi-solid blob that rolled slightly when she straightened, forcing me to jump back and nearly trip over my own feet. I cursed under my breath, muttering double entendres about customary rolls and blob blessings that no one could hear, thankfully, but I imagined her catching every word and clicking in amusement. Her bending had become a kind of perverse choreography, each movement a subtle test of my composure and reflexes. Every attempt I made to respond appropriately backfired spectacularly. I tried mimicking the posture once, thinking it would show respect or understanding. My arms flailed, my knees buckled, and I ended up pressed against the floor panels with my face near the stray mop droplet she had just polished. She hovered above me, jellyfish form, clicking in a rhythm that could have been applause. I almost laughed, almost cried, almost, well, something else entirely. The station's anti-gravity tiles didn't help. A minor nudge sent me floating sideways, and she pivoted midair, almost brushing me with one of her tendrils. I had to fight an internal monologue full of embarrassingly adult reactions while trying not to turn into a human disaster zone. It didn't stop at bending. She started, showing off, the ceremonial variations, shapes I hadn't imagined possible. One moment humanoid with oddly exaggerated curves, the next a soft blob hovering above the floor, then a translucent jellyfish with tentacles that floated in perfect slow motion. Every shift made me aware of entirely inappropriate sensations, my mind juggling sexual tension, fear of being caught, and a desperate need to understand what counted as acceptable human behavior in response. Double entendres came naturally in my internal commentary. Honor ritual or hazard pay? I whispered, eyes glued to her morphing form. She clicked again. I swear it was laughter. Romantic tension crept in too. I tried joking once about her bending etiquette, and she interpreted it as teasing, hovering closer, tentacles brushing my arm. My brain short-circuited. I muttered something about hygiene and the rituals, which she clicked approvingly at, bending even lower as if rewarding me. I didn't know if she was teaching, flirting, or tormenting, but all three felt equally accurate. Chaos had become eroticized. Cleaning tools floated around us in zero gravity, bumping, slipping, and occasionally smearing alien gel across the floor and my uniform. I had to dodge, laugh, and dodge again. By the end of the week, I had realized that understanding her customs wasn't optional, it was survival. Every bend was a test, every shapeshift a challenge, and every inadvertent glance a gamble. I was learning, stumbling, and blushing all at once. Her ritual, her hovering, her morphing, she had transformed the station into a live-action lesson in erotic chaos, and somehow, I was the unwilling, aroused, and thoroughly incompetent student. By the third week, I had come to expect the unexpected, yet somehow she managed to surprise me daily. Her bending rituals had evolved into something almost theatrical. She would approach, click her throat in that teasing rhythm, and then start a sequence of shapes that made my pulse spike and my composure crumble. First humanoid, elegant and deliberate, then a soft, quivering blob, and finally, the ultimate form, a floating, semi-transparent jellyfish, tentacles undulating like a slow-motion dance. Each transformation had a rhythm, a purpose I couldn't quite decipher, and my human brain screamed, "Don't stare, don't stare, oh hell, too late!" Her hovering jellyfish form drifted dangerously close one afternoon, tendrils brushing my shoulder. I tried to maintain professionalism, adjusting my hollow pad as if that were the most important thing in the universe, but her movements had a hypnotic quality. I felt ridiculous trying to focus on oxygen levels while simultaneously calculating how to not flail into her gelatinous appendages. One tentacle lazily traced the edge of my workstation, leaving a slimy residue. My thoughts immediately took a detour into decidedly unprofessional territory. I muttered under my breath, "Honor ritual or personal attention?" And she clicked in a way that made my chest tighten. She didn't just hover. She danced around me, morphing midair from blob to humanoid to jellyfish, all while performing her bending rituals. Each position emphasized angles and curves that no human cleaning staff should ever manage, especially not in zero gravity. Every flailing tentacle, every wobble of her semi-liquid body, every deliberate hover over my workspace, felt like a test of human endurance, and more disturbingly, my ability to maintain adult composure. I tried mimicking her once, attempting what I thought was a respectful bend. My legs buckled, I collided with a floating mop drone, and she clicked again, half amusement, half approval, half something I didn't want to define. Romantic tension had shifted into full-blown chaotic erotic comedy. Her rituals, once seemingly harmless, now had consequences. Every bend triggered minor disasters. A bottle of alien cleaning gel launched across the room, landing squarely on my chest. Another tentacle nudged my hollow pad into midair, and I had to dive sideways to catch it before it smacked the floor. I cursed, whispered double entendres, and tried to rationalize it as learning alien customs, but it was increasingly difficult to convince myself. She hovered close, leaning as far as customary, allowed, and my internal commentary devolved into adult humor only fit for zero-gravity chaos manuals. Sometimes I caught glimpses of her humanoid form, just long enough to see a mischievous smile that made my mind invent inappropriate scenarios faster than my brain could censor them. Then she morphed again, blob, jellyfish, whatever the hell she called it, and I had to follow along, arms flailing, body tilting, trying not to knock into her, the cleaning drones, or the occasional hovering alien colleague who screamed at me for invading their space. I was juggling erotic tension, adult humor, and a genuine fear of getting slime in my hair. She clearly enjoyed it. Every time I made a mistake, tripped, misjudged a bend, stared too long, she clicked with a cadence that felt like laughter. Maybe it was laughter. Maybe it was alien honor. Either way, it was cruelly effective. I realized I had stopped thinking about survival alone. Now, my focus was split: how to navigate zero-gravity erotic chaos, how to avoid embarrassment, and how to endure her customs without passing out from arousal or stress. By the end of the third week, I had accepted a new reality. This wasn't just a workplace. It was a test of human limits, a mix of erotic hazard training and absurd comedy. I was learning to anticipate her bending rituals, predicting shapes, dodging tentacles, and even, momentarily, maintaining some semblance of dignity. Yet, every success was immediately followed by a new, more complicated bend. Sometimes she hovered just a millimeter from my face as a jellyfish, tentacles brushing, and I couldn't help but audibly sigh, mutter a double entendre about customary blessings. and hoped she didn't take offense. She didn't. She clicked, hovered, and bent again, turning disaster into ritual, chaos into erotic comedy, and me into a helplessly flustered human student of alien etiquette. By the 4th week, I had reached some sort of fragile equilibrium with her bending rituals, though equilibrium might be a generous word. The alien janitor had perfected her performance, timing each transformation and hover with the precision of a maestro, and I had learned to anticipate, but never fully prepare for, the chaos she brought. Today, she appeared in a form that defied all logic, half humanoid, half blob, tendrils spiraling like a jellyfish caught in slow motion, hovering mere inches from my workstation. I froze, hollow pad in hand, silently hoping that she would forgive any mistake I might make. Spoiler, she would not. She bent over first as humanoid, emphasizing angles that made me painfully aware of every flaw in my posture. I shifted, tried to focus on scanning the oxygen regulators, and failed spectacularly. My uniform brushed against a floating mop drone, which wobbled precariously in zero gravity before bouncing harmlessly off the wall, but not before coating me in a thin layer of alien gel. I cursed, muttering something about customary disasters, and she clicked in that teasing cadence, clearly entertained by my clumsy reaction. Every bend, every morph, seemed designed to provoke chaos, and yet it felt intimate in a way I couldn't ignore. Then she morphed mid-bend, blob-like this time, and hovered closer. Tentacles lazily brushed my arms and chest. I tried to dodge, but zero gravity and my own flustered anticipation made me spin sideways, accidentally colliding with a floating crate. She clicked again, approving, or mocking, I couldn't tell. I muttered a string of double entendres under my breath about customary pressure points and cleaning blessings, which made her click in a rhythm that could only be laughter. I wasn't sure if I was learning alien etiquette or auditioning for some twisted, erotic comedy show she had designed specifically for me. Romantic tension had solidified into something more reciprocal. She hovered near enough that our proximity created a strange electric heat, each bend bringing her closer, each tentacle brush teasingly deliberate. I tried to comment on the ritual, attempting humor to regain control of the situation, and she clicked, tilted, and bent even lower, a subtle invitation in her form that I wasn't sure I was ready to accept but couldn't resist. I stumbled backward into a trolley of floating cleaning supplies, sending alien gels and sprays airborne in a perfect zero-gravity arc. We were a mess, dripping in slimy substances, yet it felt absurdly erotic, like the station itself conspired to make her customs as messy and intimate as possible. She hovered back-arching in her final form, a perfect blend of humanoid and jellyfish. Tentacles spiraled gracefully around me without touching, creating the illusion of contact while leaving me to imagine sensations that weren't entirely real, but close enough to make me hyper-aware of my own body. I stammered, muttering something about honor rituals, which she interpreted with a tilt of her gelatinous head and a teasing click. I realized in that moment that this chaos, this erotic absurdity, was her way of connecting, of teaching, and of having fun at my expense. I couldn't decide whether to be embarrassed or grateful. I settled on both. Then, as if for a final comedic flourish, she triggered every cleaning device in the station at once, mop drones whirring, gels floating, lights blinking wildly. I ended up suspended midair, tangled in a mop tendril, dripping with alien gel, staring at her as she hovered above, perfectly composed. She bent again, fluidly, each motion a perfect combination of ritual, tease, and chaos. I groaned, muttering double entendres about customary blessings and cleaning ceremonies, fully aware she understood and approved. She clicked, hovered closer, tentacle brushing lightly against my arm, and I realized something crucial. I had survived her customs, I had laughed, I had stumbled, I had blushed, and somehow, I had enjoyed every ridiculous second of it. As the station settled from the final flurry of chaos, I floated there, dripping in gel, limbs sticky and tangled, yet fully alive and aware of her presence. She bent once more, a teasing arc that ended in humanoid form, hovering close, clicking softly, as if congratulating me. I exhaled, muttering something about surviving intergalactic etiquette while secretly wishing the bending never stopped. She clicked again, hovering a fraction closer, and I knew, without a doubt, that tomorrow would bring another ritual, another chaotic dance, and I would be utterly, helplessly, hopelessly caught in it all. And I couldn't wait.